overdue and a good move.
Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, joins us, national writer and columnist, covers college football with us on 365 Sports. Brandon, thank you for your time. What are your thoughts right now? The Colorado bubble burst in the game against Oregon, and that was emphatic. Who else, and there's still a story, but is there another story in college football that you think that has been overlooked so far the first month of the season?
I don't know if Penn State's been overlooked, but I think Penn State looks actually like a national title contender for the first time under James Franklin. They've been on the precipice, it seems like. But to me, in every single game, they just have what it takes in the trenches, defensively, and they've got that quarterback finally that they've been needing for the last 6 to 7 years to get over that hump. And, listen, those top three teams in the Big Ten, they're everything right now, and they're all legitimate playoff contenders, and we haven't been able to say that in the Big Ten ever. It's always been Michigan and Ohio State in the playoff era, and I think Penn State's legitimate this year.
What did you take away from Ohio State's win that was very gritty against Notre Dame? I mean, they've done that in the past, but maybe not necessarily under Ryan Day in that fashion.
Yeah, everybody's talking about the physicalness and the toughness or whatever, and listen, maybe Notre Dame should have brought Lou Holtz out, the 11th player on the field for that last play. Maybe they could have stopped Ohio State. But, listen, I don't know about this storyline of Ohio State not being tough enough. I mean, last year they looked the part. I mean, they took Georgia down to the wire. Maybe should have beaten them, even without Marvin Harrison. So I think, listen, Ohio State is legit, and I think the kind of storyline, they're not physical enough. But we pick and choose kind of what the situation is there. Listen, Ohio State, they've lost to Michigan and practically no one else. I think still there's some hangover there from Oregon going into their house, a couple of years ago and beating them and being more physical. But I don't think Ohio State's got an issue with their identity up front.
Brandon, has Alabama figured it out after the win over Ole Miss, or is this just going to be kind of a week-by-week thing, you think, offensively, where they just find a way to put it together and lean a lot on that defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, it's going to be week to week still. Listen, Jalen Milroe was still missing some throws in that game. That offense is still going to be herky-jerky week to week. But I will say they seem to have figured some things out about how to utilize the tight ends. And listen, Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator from Notre Dame, that was his bread and butter at Notre Dame. It seems like he's figuring that out with the personnel there at Alabama. But, listen, they've got another loss or two probably on that schedule, potentially. But, the SEC West is wide open, in my opinion. But Alabama's just not in that upper echelon of maybe being a top four or really even a top six team. And the reason for that is because that offense is going to be heckle, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde all season.
Do you believe in USC that they're better? They were good last year. Then obviously were beaten by Tulane in the bowl game. But do you see them as any better than they were a year ago? I watched Arizona State, and I still see some things that seem to be chinks in the armor.
Yeah, there certainly are. And I wonder about their concentration. It's like they just thought they can go on the road against a Power 5 team and beat them. And you can't do that in college football. I don't care how talented you are. There might be two teams better than USC in their own conference in Pac-12, and that being Washington and Oregon. I think Washington, I've been high on them all year. I think number 3 in my poll a week ago. I still have them there right now. Washington's the best team in the Pac-12 by far right now. They've got the best quarterback, too, in Michael Penix. That guy is extremely deadly accurate. Some of the throws he makes are otherworldly, guys. Caleb Williams is extremely talented, but I do wonder about just the concentration of everything. And listen, that's kind of been the DNA of Lincoln Riley's teams. Like every year, there's like 2 games on the schedule that just seems like they come out flat. And sometimes it's in the big games, including in the Red River rivalry, as you guys have seen in the past. So I've got a lot of questions about that team. I think they're extremely talented, but I do wonder if they're going to be able to keep up that level of focus week to week.
Brandon, who has been the most disappointing to you so far?
Bama. I think it's Bama. That offense I thought would be much better than what it is. I thought it was going to take half a step back from last season. but it's just been very disappointing. And then right behind them, to be quite honest, is Texas A&M. And both of those teams still, I think, will contend for the SEC West championship, but you can't lose the way you did against Miami and expect people to sit there and go, oh, well, they still have a lot of games to play. They could potentially be a SEC champion. It doesn't look like it, even if they are a contention. It's just there's a lot of teams in the SEC West that can contend for an SEC West championship, but are they really top 10 teams? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, we might still be overrating Alabama, to be quite honest. Even with them just being in the top 15, we might still be overrating them.
And there's a note, by the way, A&M loses their quarterback for at least 2 to 4 weeks. That's an update on the injury from the game against Auburn on Saturday.
And I like Max Johnson, guys. I really like him. I thought they looked better, obviously, in the second half against Auburn with him out there. You know, listen, Connor may have lost his job by getting injured. It's going to be interesting to follow him the next month.
So, Brandon, I saw you put out your own rankings each week, your own top 30, and you had the Noles. Talking about the Noles on top, they obviously have had a couple of games that weren't the sexiest outcomes, but they got the job done, and they got the big monkey off their back with the Clemson win this past weekend. As you pointed out, like those are just some of the types of games you're going to have to win along the way, right, to become a playoff team, become a championship team. What are your thoughts about where FSU sits as this first month winds down?
Yeah, you guys know this. Every team, every year that ends up being a national champion, practically, they have a game where a lot of things have to come together and they just have to escape by the skin of their teeth. For Georgia last year, it was in the playoff against Ohio State. Florida State had a pretty difficult schedule here in these first 4 weeks. And say what you will, there is something to be said mentally about having that losing streak against Clemson and having to go on the road and do it. Yes, the field goal kicker who was retired came back and missed the field goal for Clemson, and Florida State had to rally to win. But not just that, but Clemson had lost only one game at home under Dabo where they led by double digits at one point. And that happened last year against South Carolina, and then it happened again against Florida State. Florida State had to come back from double digits, and they had to find ways to score, one defensively on a scoop and score, for example. Florida State's just got it, guys. They've got the talent. They've got the moxie. They know when it sees opportunity. People seem to think that's luck, but when there's an opportunity, you take advantage of it. Too many teams don't. They end up punting the ball after getting a turnover or getting good field position. Florida State didn't have to do that in the second half, and they really controlled that game after halftime, and that's what championship teams do. Florida State's in the driver's seat in the ACC, and as a result, they are a top 4 team. And to me, because of resume, the way they have won, the pieces they all have, to me right now, they deserve to be number 1.
Brandon, I'm a Florida State alum, and those are as close to sweet nothings as you can ever say to me. But on the other side of that with Clemson, I'm kind of curious as to why Dabo Swinney has veered off into his I'm going to do it this way and no other way era when he used to be loose and fun and innovative.
Yeah, great question. And I thought he was kind of opening himself back up a little bit when he fired Brandon Streeter, one of his guys, as the OC, and brought in Garrett Riley. And also maybe looking at the transfer portal a little bit harder and actually getting guys that he needs. But he hasn't quite done that, and the offense not necessarily has improved all that much. I mean, Kay Klubnik's the top-tier elite quarterback. I think this offseason, guys, is going to be critical in how we view the Dabo Swinney era at Clemson. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach, no doubt, but you don't want to peter out in the last 3 to 5 years of your tenure there. You want to keep this thing going, get back in the playoff at some point in these next 5 years. And I think to do that, he's got to open himself up and utilize that transfer portal. I know everybody's saying that. That's the easy thing to do, just to say, yeah, just go to the portal and fill your holes on that offense or defense. But listen, it's true. They haven't done it. I mean, they have amounted to getting 2 transfers in the transfer portal era, and they amount to what are pretty much just walk-on quarterbacks. A former Clemson quarterback who transferred to Northwestern that they brought back on the team. I mean, these are guys that are not providing any help on your offense where you need better receivers. You need some better depth in the offensive front. And Dabo better kind of wake up and see that transfer portal is not going anywhere. NIL is not going anywhere. And yes, you can do things the way you want to, but to a certain extent, you got to open yourself up and adapt with the times.
Brandon, looking at the Big 12 real quick, Texas obviously seems to be the class of the league, and Oklahoma, you can make an argument for them right now as well. Great news is we'll get to see those two play here in a couple of weeks. Outside of that, I guess the Kansas schools are sort of in the mix, but what have been your thoughts on what has been a disappointing Big 12 as far as just the quality depth goes? And do you see this as being a 2-3 horse race, if that? What are your thoughts as these first 4 games have unfolded?
Yeah, here's just my stream of consciousness on all this. What the hell happened to Texas Tech?
Yeah.
They had the most disappointing team in the Big 12 to me. I thought they were a legit potential contender in the conference, and they just looked nothing like it. What's happened to Baylor's defense? I think that they're going to get better in the next couple of weeks, especially when Blake gets back at quarterback. But, yeah, it's Texas and OU, and I think everybody else beyond that. And there's certainly tiers to all of that. Also this, and listen, I know not a lot of people are talking about them, but Houston not being all that good this year, and they haven't really left there. I saw a tweet today from Joseph Duarte that they've only traveled a total of 10 miles to play in the first 4 weeks of the season. What are they going to look like when they get on the road in a true road game in the Big 12 this year? I've got some concerns there. So, but yeah, listen, I know Texas is under a microscope. They're going to be criticized or praised for every little thing they do right or wrong. But Texas is about as complete of a team in the conference this year. I think OU's just behind them. And, hey, how about that OU defense showing up here this first month of the season? Very impressed with that. And that perhaps that's maybe the one thing we're not talking about enough about the top-tier Big 12 teams, that OU's defense has been night and day since last season.
By the way, Houston has not left, so they've traveled 0 miles, 10 miles to Rice. Baylor has not left Waco, and they're about to go to Orlando to play UCF, and Houston's headed to Lubbock, so they're both going to cross each other as they head completely in opposite directions. Brandon, we appreciate it as always. Always busy. Great stuff. We appreciate your time being a part of 365 Sports when you can.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, with us on 365 Sports, and then we'll